Welcome. This is Dr. Paul Dyer and Mr. Josh Hatch, and this tonight is Freedom Fight. And we come every other Tuesday at 6 p.m. with Freedom Fight. We talk about issues that I think you need to know about. Otherwise, we know will happen to you or your loved one. We know that we're trying to engage the community more than anything and get you to understand three things. It's always been about three things: getting an understanding, getting information, and hopefully taking action. We are not just hopeful. We know that you will take an action. There will be numbers screaming along the side of your screen when you watch it on any of your social media. And if you have any questions later after that, you can call Mr. Josh Hatch at freedomfighters.info, or you can just always contact me in inboxes with any questions throughout the show. But without that, we're going to go right into the show because we have a full-packed show. Josh, take it away.
First and foremost, I want to thank everybody for taking the opportunity to listen to the show. We have Miss Maria Fiorentino, who has joined us today. She's a retired attorney. But before we get into the show, Maria, do you mind introducing yourself to the viewers? Tell us a little bit about your practice as an attorney and where you're at currently today.
Sure, Josh. I'm a retired attorney, and when I first started working, I just did criminal law. Granted, I volunteered and did some civil things, but my main interest was criminal law. My undergraduate degree is criminal justice, so crime was always my interest. I started just working in the district courts, just doing small cases, drunk driving, driving without a license, that kind of thing. Then later on, I went into post-conviction cases. I really found them very, very interesting because I really enjoyed working with inmates. And most of the inmates that I work with have been convicted of pretty serious crimes. Most of them are lifers. And if they're not, they have roughly 50 years or more. And post-conviction is a civil proceeding. However, it's in the criminal arena. And basically what it is it's the last-ditch effort for an inmate. After he does his appeal, after the trial, he does an appeal. He may do a motion for modification, that kind of thing. But post-conviction comes after that. And basically what you're saying with post-conviction is there was either ineffective assistance of trial counsel, ineffective assistance of appellate counsel, or some court error, or there was some prosecutorial misconduct on the state. And you bring that up in post-conviction, hoping that an issue will stick, you'll win on an issue. And usually what happens with that is if you win, usually they don't want to do the trial over again. So you negotiate on a new prison term. I also did appeals from post-conviction, which appeals are not guaranteed. Whereas an appeal from a trial, you are guaranteed an appeal, but you are not guaranteed an appeal from a post-conviction. So the Court of Special Appeals would decide, are they going to take the case or not? And I had a number of cases that were brought up before the Court of Special Appeals, and my last one, I won. So I kind of ended up with a bang.
Yes.
So I was really happy about that. So now I'm retired, and I'm in the process of writing a book on criminal justice reform. And I hope to be published in the near future.
Maria, you've done an excellent job since Freedom Fighters has been established with assisting us in a lot of our cases. And so I label you a freedom fighter for sure. And we want to thank you on behalf of all of our clients for all the hard work that you have done on behalf of them. One of the things that we have really been focusing on, Maria, over the last few weeks is wrongful convictions. And the reason why is because just like we were talking this past Tuesday on WPFW about wrongful convictions and how it affects criminal defendants, a client that I am assisting by the name of Freedom experienced a wrongful conviction. And for a lot of viewers, it's hard to really grasp the concept of wrongful convictions. So before I ask you a few questions so that we can get a better understanding, this morning, as I got myself together and I went downstairs, my son was sitting on the couch. He was watching TV. He normally gets up to, get the dog out and feed him and get himself together for school. This morning, he was sitting on the couch. I got my breakfast together and I sat down next to him. He didn't say much to me. He was watching the TV. He was tuned in. And I glanced over at the TV and it caught my attention. And what he was watching was so relevant, was so on point, I had to tell my son to rewind it. And after watching it, I had to think. I want to share with you all what my son was watching. His name is Jay. And it's a 10-minute video, but please pay close attention.
For those of you who are listening live on podcasts, we're having a little bit of audio issue, and it's coming up. Josh was about ready to play this video. For those of you who can see it, you'll see that we're going to end up playing this video. So I just want you guys to stay patient, stay with us. We're getting this video where the volume gets up. Joshua, can you hear it on your end at all?
Yes, I can hear it on my end.
So you're going to have to share your audio too, not just your video.
Okay, I'm going to pause it for a moment since we're having technical difficulties. You couldn't hear it all?
No.
No, I couldn't hear it either.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, I'll do one even better. How about I explain what transpired in this video?
Okay, sir.
So what transpired is this. You saw that it started off as a actual hearing, a court hearing. It was a trial, and it was two people that were talking at one table. That was of course, the state and its representatives. And then you had the criminal defendant that was seated to your left, identified as being in the orange. And the guy was charged with the crime. Unsure exactly as to what crime it was, but I know that it was a felony that he was charged with. The older attorney, who was the boss, the state's attorney that was had the gray hair, was talking to the younger gentleman. The younger gentleman was listening to the criminal defendant who had been charged. He was saying that he was innocent, that he was not present at the scene that they were trying to place him in when the crime actually transpired. The judge asked the criminal defendant, did he have any proof of it? Of course, his attorney said, no, he did not have any proof of it. So the two state's attorneys were talking. The younger gentleman who had just got out of law school was questioning his supervisor, saying, hey, listen, this guy's saying he's innocent. What if he really is? The boss would go on to say that he, in essence, didn't care. He said, I just won a case. Why do I care? if he committed the crime or not. Why do you even care? As the video goes on, and I want everybody, please watch this video. It's 10 minutes, but it tells a whole story. It's called Prosecutor Sends Innocent Black Man to Jail. As the story goes on, the younger state's attorney goes on an information quest. And every time he would find something to validate what the defendant had said, which is that he was innocent, he would bring it to his boss. So the first thing that he brought him was a receipt from a place that
he was at.
The defendant was at, which was completely 2,000 miles away from the scene of where the crime transpired. So the boss would say to the young attorney, state's attorney, "Oh, look, what is that? Who first and foremost, who have you shown this information to?" He says, "Nobody." He says, "We're going to keep it that way." He said, "How do we know that someone didn't get his credit card and use it?" So he's trying to find a reason to excuse his revelation. Later on, the supervisor is talking to another state's attorney in the hallway. And he brings him another piece of evidence, another piece of information. And it's another piece of paper verifying, again, that he was somewhere else. I'm hoping I'm telling the story chronologically as it goes on, but you most definitely will see it. The most damning thing that happened was at the end of the video. They're in court. This gentleman is ready to get sentenced. The younger prosecutor runs in the courtroom. The supervisor, he's already seated down. He's excited. He's happy. He secured a conviction. He boasted to his colleague how he was ready to get an innocent man life. Young man runs in the courtroom, sits down next to his colleague, flips open his computer and says, "I got it. I have a video showing that the criminal defendant that is charged is actually innocent." This video was taken by a news reporter. They were filming a story. And it just so happens that this person that's the accused walked by. You know what the supervisor did? Slammed the computer down. Said, "Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter." The judge kind of caught a whiff of what was going on then, and he asked the supervisor, who was identified as the superior, is everything okay? And he said, "Yeah, everything's fine." He said, "Well, if the people, the state, doesn't have anything further, we're going to move forward." He said, "Does the state have anything that it would like to say?" He said, "No." Now, I missed one key critical part, and that was at the beginning. The young man, the state's attorney, walked by the family member, and this elderly woman told him and looked him in his eyes and said, "It's never too late to do what's right." As the judge told the defendant to stand up to get sentenced, over his screams of him being innocent, he was ready to sentence him. He was ready to slam the gavel. And the young prosecutor jumps up and says, "Wait, this man really is innocent. I have proof that he's innocent." And he walks up to the bench. He shows the judge, first and foremost, the paper that he showed the supervisor, that he had receipts proving that the person that was charged was in another location spending money. He showed him another piece of paper, again confirming the first one that he showed. Then he showed the video. And then he walked back to the table and he asked the supervisor is this true? And the supervisor stood up. And to me, he gave the sentiment of most prosecutors, which was, Your Honor, he may not be guilty of this crime, but look at him. Mm-hmm. Look at him. He's guilty of countless of others. And the judge stopped him. And the young prosecutor said, yes, I told him all this that I'm telling you, but he was more concerned about his political career of being a state's attorney than he was about doing what was right. And so that was the end of the story. And we know that that was just a story based on the ending of it. Because that doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. And what further doesn't happen, Dr. Dyer, is this. That judge in this enactment told the sheriff to immediately take the handcuffs off of that criminal defendant and that he was released, and to turn around about face and place him on the state's attorney, which should happen every single time they consciously withhold information that goes to the innocence of a criminal defendant. And that's what I wanted to talk to Ms. Florentino about. Because Ms. Florentino has a background in dealing with post-conviction matters. And so, Ms. Florentino, in your experience, how do these wrongful convictions play out in court? Why are there so many people incarcerated right now? It's sweltering numbers that the state's attorney's office has not even, and the police department, in most cases, have not even followed their own internal procedures, protocols, and policies in investigating a crime first, and then taking it to the prosecutor and having these criminal defendants charged. Is there anything that you can tell us about this? You're muted, Maria.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Unfortunately, you kept freezing, and I got thrown off the meeting and then reconnected, so I missed a lot of what you were saying about this clip, and I really wanted to see it so I could properly give you an answer. But from my experience doing post-conviction work, this is what attorneys do work with. Mistakes that were made by the police, mistakes that were made by the prosecution. One thing, you mentioned about the young prosecutor that said, hey, I got a video. Well, basically, that's called exculpatory evidence. And that means it's evidence that goes to prove that the defendant is innocent. And it is the prosecutor must turn over all their evidence to the defense prior to trial. This is called discovery.
Wait a minute, Maria. I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. You said they are required to? This is something that they have to do?
Yes, this is something. Matter of fact, when I was working in the district court, which is, I'd say, penny ante criminal stuff, all I had to do was call the state's attorney's office and ask them, hey, is the stuff ready for me to pick up, the file? And it's already ready for me. And I would just go up to the prosecutor's office and I'd go to the desk and tell them who I was and the case, and they would give me the discovery. Now, of course, I would always file motion for discovery just to be on the safe side, because a long time ago, you had to do that. Now, you don't have to. It should be automatic, but attorneys do it anyway. They file a motion for discovery asking everything, including the kitchen sink. Now, how do you know if certain evidence is exculpatory until you get it? Right. You don't know what evidence they have. So, of course, in a post-conviction, the trial is already done. The appeal is already done. So you have to go and ask for the whole state's attorney's file. You have to get the police file. And when you look at all of that, and you also get the public defender's file, if there was a public defender involved in the trial, and you look at everything, and in that state's attorney's file, you're going to be surprised. There could be evidence that's exculpatory, but they never turned it over.
Okay, so
Marie,
let's talk on that notion. We have a trial.
Right.
An attorney has asked, not once, but twice, for information, specific information, that they are attempting to use in order to present a proper defense for their client. They're denied both times. Matter of fact, let's get real specific. In trial, they attempt to introduce a defense and they're halted by the judge because they don't have the information that the state has in their possession. 20 years later, let's we run into a Maria Fiorentino who's about really getting down to the bottom of the facts. You pull those files and you find all of the information that the original attorney requested. Not only that the attorney requested, but the information that the judge during that trial asked the defense did they have in order to introduce a theory to the jury. And the state said, we don't have it. We don't have any information even connecting this particular issue or this particular information that the attorney is seeking. 20 years later, Maria, you find out the state's attorney's office lied. Not only did they have that information, but they had more information that you could even think of to ask for. But guess what? It's a continuing discovery. They must turn over this information.
That's right.
Who's being held accountable now? You had this man sitting in prison for over 20 years with information that you had in your possession to prove that he's innocent of this crime, and you didn't give it to the defense. What would be the reason you would do something like that?
Well, you know, one of the reasons off the top of my head is the state's attorney, that particular county. As you know, those state's attorneys are elected positions. And the more convictions, as I call feathers in their hat, the more they're going to get reelected because the community wants to see the criminals locked up. So they vote for him again. So all they're concerned about is let's just get this conviction. Okay? So that's could be a possibility. That's one possibility that's going on there. But in a post-conviction, that's what you bring up as prosecutorial misconduct. Now, in my book, you know, what I did in my book, I divided all my chapters into various sections of the criminal justice system. Number one, the police. I talked about police reform. Number two, bail. Talked about bail reform. Number three, I talked about sentencing. What happens at sentencing and how sentences need to be changed. And number four, I talked about prison, which is very big reform. And the last is the parole reform, because not too many people talk about parole reform. So basically, you need the reform of the entire system here. And what I talked about in the last chapter, which is what I'm working on now, is corruption, oversight, racism, and community improvement. Now, how can you fix corruption? In my opinion, one way to fix it is through oversight. Now, oversight, in my opinion, should be a special, and this is what Maryland now, through a legislative process, they are instituting the oversight. And am I still on?
Yes, you are.
Okay.
Loud and clear.
Okay. They're instituting this oversight. I forget what they called it. And it's going to be within the Attorney General's office so they can issue subpoenas and convene grand juries, which I think is great. But I believe it has to be a separate body within the criminal justice system. So it's not biased. It's not, they show no favoritism toward the police, towards the courts, towards the prosecutors, towards the defense attorneys, towards the defendant, nothing. And what happens, what I'd like to see is as soon as a defendant gets arrested and he gets put into the system, he gets assigned an oversight agent or an oversight, whatever you want to call him. And that person follows him all the way through the criminal justice system. And the purpose of that oversight is to make sure nothing goes wrong along the way. And as soon as something goes wrong, they start an action right away so that the things get corrected immediately, not 10, 20 years down the road when the person's been in prison, an innocent person's been in prison for all that length of time, suffering, and their family suffering. Now, of course, I'm not an expert in all of this as far as reforming the criminal justice system, but I'm just putting my thoughts out there and thinking outside of the box.
Right.
I hope that the experts in the criminal justice system will think outside of the box too.
Well, we know that, they've had a hard time doing that, thinking outside of the box. As a matter of fact, they are well organized within the box enough that they don't want to go outside the box because it's been working for them so well.
Maria, before, there's a couple things. First, I just want to say thank you for being the warrior of life, right? Because when you commit yourself to doing the right thing, you become that warrior against all the negative of evil. That's the life of living, and thank you, thank you, thank you. I have a couple of questions. The questions I have is, who are the experts that you can come up with? What are the titles, not the names of a person, but what are the experts in the criminal justice? Where do you see... Because you said we have to leave it up to the experts to look outside the box. What are the experts?
Well, I'm, as well as other people are bringing, or attorneys or other people that are working within the criminal justice system are bringing forth their ideas, their thoughts on reforming the criminal justice system. But the experts are basically the legislatures.
Okay.
They're the people who write the laws. That's where the change has to begin. But it's also the people, prison authorities. They're the experts. Prison authorities, the parole board, the parole commission, they're the experts. The police, they need to be brought in to effect the change. The judges, they know what's going on in court. We all have to work together to affect the change.
It would be really nice if that were to happen. It would be really nice. And Maria, you and I, we speak a lot. We talk a lot. But, I would just say that the experts are people like you. The experts are people like Dr. Dyer and people who, even myself, people who are in the community who are truly advocating to deal with the core of the issue. See, the experts have been doing, have been doing exactly what they've been paid to do.
That's
Look
right.
in their pocket and make everything sound good. See, the Constitution is a beautiful idea. The fact remains that those same constitutional protections that are supposed to actually insulate a person from being violated of their rights exist to this very day. And guess what? They're violated every single day.
I think,
and that's the reason why you got people like Freedom incarcerated.
I think we're missing a part that I don't know if, or I'll ask Maria, and I know this is a tough question, but the law has to remove personality and prejudices, correct? When you work in the law, you have to remove yourself of your personal self and your prejudices. And because it is very difficult to do, we know that as human beings, it's very difficult to do. But we're supposed to work the law. The problem we are having, that we have had with racism, corruption, is because people insert their personal self in it. And they are getting gains from it. And that's what I think Josh was talking about. They have been doing exactly what they want to do, not what the law requires them to do. And I don't know how we're ever going to separate that unless you say it's the oversight committee, right? And the oversight committee, basically, we watch you cross your T's and dot your I's. And we remove again ourselves from the personal, because it's so personal to the few or the many who's been doing the injustices, the judges who have an agenda, the legislators who only want to get voted again, the district attorney who only wants to be voted in again. It just seems like, is it possible, being an attorney as long as you have, and I know you're emotionally charged, is it possible that we can remove the emotional, personal out of it? Is it possible?
Okay, this is what I was talking about oversight, but the whole gist of my book is criminal justice reform. You cannot reform the criminal, like right now, everyone's talking about police reform. I think that's great. That's great. But what about bail reform?
Right.
What about prison reform?
Right.
Now, all of those components of the criminal justice system must work together and must be reformed together, so that their goal is to not rehabilitate the offender, but reform the offender. And by that, I mean, if you rehabilitate him, that means you're going to put him back in the position he was in prior to coming into prison. Reforming is to make him a better person so that when he gets out, he's not going to go back to criminal behavior, because he's going to have the wherewithal to live a good, healthy life. But that all comes with police reform, bail reform, changing the sentences, because what I'm advocating, and a lot of nonprofit organizations are also advocating the eradication of life sentences. I just don't understand why we have to have life sentences unless it's for someone who actually shows no remorse and he cannot be reformed in any way, even given a chance. Therefore, life sentences, as I said in my book, they're given out like candy on Halloween night. Life sentences should be very specific to specific individuals. And once these sentences, like even drug crimes, I believe all drug crimes need to be, we shouldn't even have them, because using drugs is not a crime. It's a disease. Why are we criminalizing it? And the people who sell it, they're preying upon the people who use it, and they're even selling it to support their own habit. So there's a disease going on. Why do we have to criminalize it? Right now, you're seeing marijuana is being decriminalized for a number of reasons. I even have my brother-in-law who's taking medicinal marijuana because he had a number of back surgeries, and it's helping him completely. He's off all pain medication. But he goes to a location, he has a card, and he's able to purchase the different forms of marijuana to help him with his pain. Why can't we do that with all the other drug crimes? You get rid of all those people in prison. All those drug crimes you get rid of. You lowered the sentences and you reform the sentences. The sentences should be specific to each individual offender. And what goes on in prison reform is a big thing with me. An offender shouldn't be lying there in a cell doing nothing. He should be either working on his GED if he doesn't have one, working on a vocation, working on drug alcohol rehab, working on any mental health issues as well as medical issues, and even taking beginning college courses. So that offender is working from morning to night to make his life better. But I can't go into all the specifics of my book. But as you can see, I'm reforming all the parts so they work in unison together. They're interdependent upon one another for the specific goal of making the offender a better person. Because what happens, I had a client of mine, he had a New York detainer against him, and he was in prison here. It was for a burglary charge, I think it was. I didn't handle that part. I handled his parole part, getting him out on parole and getting him back to New York. And this was during the pandemic, so it was when New York was really bad with the pandemic. But in the end, he got released. And what happened? He was in Hagerstown. They took him to a detention center in Baltimore City, dropped him off at the parking lot, couldn't put him into the building because of COVID, gave him $50, and he was waiting for his parents to come and pick him up from New York. They dropped him off at 9 in the morning. His parents didn't get there till 12. And he said, Maria, thank God it wasn't winter, because I don't know what I would have done, because how can I buy a coat for $50?
You know, Maria, and I hear a lot of people talking about reform, and depending upon the person and the audience that they're speaking to, you know, that is such a loose term, you know, and I understand exactly what you're saying, you know, and as I was sitting here thinking about it and hearing you speak, I said, you know, not to be a rebel, but to be real. I have to say that I don't think the system needs to be reformed. I think it needs to be destroyed. And what I mean by that,
I agree.
I agree with you.
Hear me out. Just hear me out. I say that because reforming it, in a sense, is such a tedious task. You know, it requires so much to go into it. All those components that you were talking about, all of them have one thing in common, Maria. And that one thing that they have in common, you know, that is what it produces is money. But it was built off of an ideological construct that allowed itself to justifiably do what it's doing to this very day, which was incarcerating Black and brown people by the dozens and billions and trillions, and producing a profit for those who are reaping the benefits. And we know who they are. Those individuals in positions of power. And just like the video, prosecutors are not really worried about upholding their ethical duty.
They're not.
Attorneys aren't, most of them, Maria, aren't worried about defending their clients. This is a big money laundering scheme, the criminal justice system in and of itself. And they have excused their actions based upon their belief, that belief of being able to incarcerate someone and criminalize every act, to criminalize the Black male, to criminalize his actions, to remove him from the home. I mean, this has historical roots that are going to have to be destroyed.
Yes.
Hold on, Maria. There's a couple things. When we talk about overfishing, right? And we're using nets that gather up X amount of fish. You're only talking about overfishing for the few who have the big nets. You don't talk about overfishing for a person who has a cane pole or a fishing pole. So the criminal justice system has been fishing and gathering up. Now there's a lot of people, a lot of other fish get caught in these nets that's not supposed to be caught. And they're okay with that. It's literally, they're okay with this. And this is why it's so damaging to sit back, the things you've done, the things we're talking about, and it's really okay for the people or the powers that be. But the powers that be are the white people who never get affected. And it's not just white people, but anyone who never touches their doorstep. Like, they don't have anyone they ever known that went to jail. They don't know anyone who's ever been wrongly convicted. Those people, if they don't speak up for just the wrongness of it, it will continue to happen because they're like, well, I'm safe. My home is safe. My kids are safe. My school is safe. And they're okay with it, so they'll continue to do it. Because the only people that are screaming, crying, and jumping up and down are the people who either have skin in the game, or we have passion in the game, or we have justice in the game. But justice doesn't... A lot of people are sitting at home who don't ever talk about wrongful convictions. If you ask them directly, do they care about justice? They're like, yeah, I care about justice. And what do you know about justice? And what do you know about injustice? I don't know. And that's as far as it goes. And I think that's where we're hurting. Because we need them involved and to say, that's wrong.
That's wrong. That's wrong. And that's why that video, to me, was so important, Dr. Dyer. It was so important, just the imagery of seeing two individuals who work in the same office that have the same responsibilities, who took the same oath, that irrespective of a person being a criminal defendant or not, their job and their duty is to uphold the law equally across the board. And in most instances, those individuals are really attempting to secure their political career. Because now look at it. Look at what has transpired with Marilyn Mosby and the kickback that she's getting just from some of the things that she's attempting to institute. And those things that she's attempting to institute are correct. They're right. They're spot on. There's no need to incarcerate someone for marijuana. There's no need to incarcerate someone for low-level offenses. For what? It's no point in doing it. But because it goes against what the norm is, because it goes against what the norm is, and more importantly, because you are a black woman in this position and you're doing this, we have a problem with that. There's an issue with that. No, the ideology that operates these institutions must be destroyed. And that ideology is racism all day long.
Yeah.
I mean, the core of mass incarceration rests in and is rooted in slavery, period. And one came from private ownership.
That's right.
From it being the Hatch plantation or being the Dyer plantation or the Florentino plantation till it being Patuxent or the state of Maryland or the federal government. And you have all of these institutions now. And instead of picking cotton, we're making license plates. We're making signs. We're wrapping vehicles. It's called MCE. It's not called a slave plantation. But the reality is that you have sent slave catchers inside of these communities to lock up people for offenses that are so minute and can be addressed with treatment rather than assigning them 6 digits behind their last name so that you can place them in MCE so they can make patches for your uniforms. I mean, this is some bullshit. Excuse my language, but it is. And for us to believe that they don't understand that, we are out of touch with reality, and to believe that they're going to, in some way, shape, or form, roll back on something that has been so lucrative. It's out of touch with reality as well.
They're not going to do it.
Because they gain from having prisoners out in California fight fires. They gain from having prisoners inside Maryland institutions work for MCE. It's no purpose in educating individuals who you want to recycle through this system. Why should we do that? Why should we be interested in providing treatment for individuals who we want to go back to the community and snort them drugs?
Maria, why did they stop educating in prisons? What was the reasons that you have found out why they pulled that?
What I found is just lack of money.
Okay.
But why is there lack of money?
Right.
Because we have mass incarceration. Right. We got so many people. We have to pay to house all these people. But if you get rid of drug crimes, right? You get rid of a lot of life sentences. All that money that would have been spent to house those prisoners, you can take that money. You're just shifting the money around. You take that money and you institute these programs within the prisons. Also institute these programs within the high crime rate communities. That's when I talked about community improvement. But I remember in my chapter on police reform, I did a very small blurb on the history of the police. Back in the colonial days, how it started, it was to capture escaped slaves. Doesn't it sound like maybe we're doing the same thing today? Nothing much has changed. And there is in Maryland, when I hate to say this, but there were only, let me think, maybe 2 of my clients were white, but one was already out of prison. So he had a parole issue. So he had been out of prison for a couple of years, but he was white. And the one with the New York detainer was also white, but the rest of my clients were all black. But why is that? We have to delve into that, and it's racism. But how do you get rid of racism? Racism is in people's hearts and in their minds. That's where it is. And I see the black people fighting against racism. It's not enough that the black people fight it. The white people have to be with them. The white, the yellow, the Hispanic, we all got to fight it.
So I got to ask you, so the question I ask is, I not to get into your personal life and how but you have white friends. And they know you've been doing this for several years. What is that type of conversation of a person who just doesn't agree with what you're doing? And you don't have to give names, but because other people need to know that I'm sure you've had these conversations about, like, Maria, what are you doing? Like, why are you wasting your time?
That's it. They don't understand how I have some family members. They tell me, little Maria, you're going into prisons? Aren't you scared? And I go, no, I love going there. That may be weird, but I love going there because I sit and I talk to my client. And I first talk to him about his case, however long it takes. When I've written up his post-conviction petition, I read it word for word to them. So they understand if I've missed anything or put things in there that's not right. We talk about it, and then after we finish talking about his case, we talk about other things. I get to know him, he gets to know me. I really enjoy the visit, and so do they. So that's the thing. People don't care. There's no more love of one another. Aren't we? Now, I'm a big Christian, Aren't we all children of God?
You're asking the wrong. You're asking the wrong people. And the question you have is that when you have that question for people you've been around, and they have gave you some ridicule, and you say, "Aren't you a child of God?" What's their answer?
They have this. How can you? Oh, they're guilty. They're guilty. They belong in prison.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
How do you know they're guilty?
Uh-huh.
You know that when I do post conviction, basically, okay, some of my clients are guilty, but even if they are guilty, that doesn't mean things weren't done wrong in their trial. Or how they were arrested, or what went wrong in prison. That doesn't mean just because they're guilty and they are guilty that everything went right.
Maria, one of the things that I say is that, just because a person committed a crime, and this is what the law is. Mm-hmm. So I'm only repeating what the law says, so please don't get upset with me. Just because a person commits a crime doesn't mean you can prove it. And if you can't prove it without breaking the law, then you shouldn't bring charges on the person in the first place. And what I mean by that is this. Freedom's case, for example. You have a litany of information that the state withheld. That's breaking the law. That's violating someone's rights. That's breaking your ethical duty and responsibility as an attorney. If you cannot properly prosecute someone, if you cannot properly bring a case before the court without violating, without denying someone their own right to be properly represented, then you should not charge that person. And in my opinion, if you're caught doing things such as withholding information from an attorney, you should have to do the same amount of time that individual had to do sitting in prison, knowing that you withheld information that prevented them from actually putting forth a defense, because that is a right.
Well, there's another thing that needs to be brought up here, is that when an attorney, whether it's the defense attorney or whether it's the prosecution, if they do something wrong, like withhold evidence or, exculpatory evidence, or they fail to do something that they should be doing, then they have to answer to the ethical committee of the Bar Association. And they should, because what is the practice of law? You need to practice the law in a just way, not in an unethical way. So they should be prosecuted. I remember I had a position with an attorney. He was in D.C. He had a small law firm, and that was when I was introduced to post-conviction. But I didn't know anything about post-conviction. This was the early part of my career. And he told me that I would be, supervised, that he would be with me. I wouldn't be alone in court, because I didn't know anything about post-conviction. Well, after 3 days, I quit because I found some unethical things that he had done, taking clients' money and not filing. It had been months and months and not filing the petition. And clients calling him, well, when are you going to file it? I gave you money. And then finally, when I told him, hey, we got a post-conviction hearing in 2 more weeks. I don't know anything about this. I'm assuming you're going to be with me and you're going to handle the case and I'm going to watch you. He said, oh, no, you're on your own. And I turned around and I said, oh, no, you are on your own. I'm leaving. And I left. And guess what? He was disbarred for failing to supervise his attorneys and for failing to file the petitions once he got the money, practicing due diligence to file the petition on time. Now, of course, post-conviction, you have 10 years with which to file from the date he was convicted. But there he was disbarred. And so here, when you're talking about all these things that these attorneys, they should be disbarred, because I always watch what I do with my client. I care about my clients. They pay me, so I'm working for them. And so many attorneys only give them a few minutes, maybe 10, 15 minutes, a half an hour. They talk to them, and then the poor defendant doesn't see the attorney until court day, doesn't know what's going on. Now, I had another case, and this is the case I won in the Court of Special Appeals. My client was convicted of rape at 15 years of age. He was tried immediately as an adult. He did have a reverse waiver hearing. Of course, I wasn't involved in all of that. But what happened at the end of his trial, as usual, the judge says, oh, you have a right to an appeal, you have a right to a 3-judge panel, you have a right to a motion to modify. Well, what 15-year-old knows what a motion to modify is? So I argued that issue in post-conviction, that his attorney should have explained it to him. And guess what? It only takes a minute. Only a minute of his time in open court to explain to this 15-year-old what a motion to modify his sentence is all about and all the ramifications. I argued it before the Court of Special Appeals, and guess what? They gave my client a belated motion to modify his sentence. He got a 50-year sentence modified to 25 years.
Wow.
So other attorneys got to step up to the plate to get the justice for these inmates, get the justice for the defendant, because there's so many defense attorneys that don't do what's right either.
And to me, I think that's where I have an issue is, like Joshua says, it's, follow the law, but then you have these people, and people hurt people who are hurt.
That's right.
These judges are not doing what's right. They have their own favoritism. These attorneys are not doing, I don't know why they went down this road. I really don't care. But they are inflicting so much pain on our civilization. Mm-hmm. Yes, a race of people, but the civilization, because you have people out here who are hunting cops because of bad attorneys and bad judges. Right? You have some good cops out here who are getting shot because the civilization is so frustrated with the criminality of judges and attorneys who don't give a damn and who are sacrificing police officers because of their gaining gains. Somehow it's some monetary gain, some political gain, but they're putting lives in danger, whether it be a black life, brown life, a cop's life, children's lives. They're putting people's lives out there, and they're collecting the reward. And I don't think the average person sees that. That's why we do this show.
No, they don't. Yeah, Dr. Dyer, that's what a lot of people, in my family or close friends of the family, they find it hard to believe that I'm a criminal defense attorney. Well, you're defending these people? I said, well, what's wrong with that? Why are you looking at these people as evil? Now, one guy that I know that's been in prison for maybe going on 26, 27 years told me, yeah, there are evil people in there. Some of them are evil. He tries to stay away from them. But the thing is, as I said before, you got to care. I care about my clients. Whether they're guilty or not, I care. I give them my undivided attention. And I listen to them, what they're saying. And that's why the racism has got to come out of our hearts and our minds. That's not good for humanity. Because we're all on the face of this earth together. And we're all facing same problems, health issues, financial issues, family problems. Can't we come together and work together to make this world a better place? Does it matter who finds the cure for cancer? Does it matter who finds that one vaccine that will get rid of COVID? Does it matter who finds a way to eliminate poverty as long as it's done? You know, we're missing out on a lot of opportunities with the black race and what's happening with the Orientals now. This is insane. Why are we living this way? And it breaks my heart. I guess maybe partly because I'm a woman, I feel it just breaks my heart to see that. Because for me, it doesn't matter whether you're black or white or Oriental or Hispanic. You are my brother and you're my sister and I love you. And I care about people. And that's the kind of people we need to get in our criminal justice system. And my reform, it's like you've got a house that's dilapidated. You got to knock it down. Maybe you keep up the foundation, but you got to build from the ground up. And you got to get the right people in there. You got to get the people that, when I talked about police reform, you got to get people in there with really high degrees that are interested in reforming and helping the community, not lying in wait to arrest, to help them and get the help in the community, drug addiction, alcohol addiction treatment, better schools, and get the police involved in that. But if you have bad cops, how can they do it? You got to tear it down.
Yes, you do. And the only thing that I would say to that, Maria, is you said one thing. You said maybe you can leave the foundation. No, you got to blow that foundation out. Mm-hmm. You got to blow it out. Yeah, you got to gut it out because if we leave the foundation, that means that we're leaving the thinking that operates these individuals that we're expecting to change. And so my thing is, Maria, you know, at the end of the day, you know, we look for qualified individuals to, you know, instruct and direct us. But the question is, who's really qualified? Right. Because I know some highly educated individuals that are highly stupid. You understand? I had a conversation with an individual today. I won't put him out there. But, you know, the education that we've received from the education system has not properly taught us right. And the reason, you know, one of the things that Minister Farrakhan, I learned from him is that if a person won't treat you right, they won't teach you right. And so what we've been taught how to fight amongst each other. Mm-hmm. We've been taught how to compete against each other. And we've been taught that while at the same time, we've been ducking from whips and now bullets. And we've been dragged into paddy wagons and, you know, beat down by police officers and now being dragged, you know, into courthouses and found wrongly convicted behind things that we didn't do. And I mean, it's not a surprise to us. It's not. None of this comes by surprise. This is all by design. Something that we expect, because America's history is littered with countless of examples of black men, black women, black children who have been treated all the same way. And so what we have to do is we have to, like you said, come collectively together and start to challenge some of these public officials publicly about their position, about how they engage in their duty to the community. And we can't be afraid. We can't be afraid of losing our political positions or lose our comfortable financial salaries when we're speaking about what's wrong and what's right.
That's right. We got to.
And at the end of the day, That's what our communities are missing. And that's what we're looking for. Leadership of individuals who are unafraid to confront these individuals who allow stuff like this to go on their watch. Judges, prosecutors, lawyers, politicians. You know, those individuals who like standing on the soapbox to get their votes. And then once they're in office, you don't hear from them anymore. Like people in my district that I haven't heard from dealing with this wrongful conviction. It's sad.
I love my brothers. I love my sister. I do want to let people know that listen to this on the podcast channels or here on any podcast channels where you get it. You get Bridges Live and you know Freedom Fight. If you want to help, not I'm asking you what you're going to do. If you want to help, you can dial 443-822-9208. I'll say it again. 443-822-9208. Listen to me carefully. Just call and we have something for you to do. We'll send you the email that you can send to your representative. We'll send you emails that you can send to your delegates. You don't have to do anything but call the number. That's it. That's it.
And hold your local politicians accountable.
Oh.
When you send them that email and they fail to respond, make sure you post that on your social media.
Yeah, let us know.
Make sure let everyone that you can know, so when they're up for re-election, and you know that's the only thing they're really concerned about is re-election, we can go ahead and put them out there. And if you're afraid to do it, come tell me.
Yeah.
I'll do it for you.
I'll do it for you. We'll do it on this show. Maria, I would love to have you back on anytime every other Tuesday. So the next Tuesday we're back on, please visit with us. I do want to talk about some of the chapters in your book, and let's get into that about reform. I think people need to understand what reform really means, because like Joshua said, I think they throw it around. I think they use it so loosely, they have no idea what we're talking about.
Yeah, my idea of reform is almost redefine.
Yes.
Redefine.
So thank you so much. Anything you want to say before we take off here, Miss Maria, please?
If anyone wants to get a hold of me, you can get a hold of me by email at M as in Maria, D as in David, C as in Cat at FiorentinoLawFirm.com, and you spell Fiorentino, F as in Frank, IORENTINO. Thanks so much for having me.
Maria, I want to thank you again for coming on to the show. Thank you very much. And again, just like Dr. Dyer said, please come back.
Please.
Will do. Thanks so much.
Thanks everyone for listening. We'll see you.